Okay, it's 4 o'clock. We'll call to meeting the council meeting for the town of Collingwood, Monday, April 17, 2023. The agenda today is that the motion to adopt the agenda says that the content of the council agenda for April 17, 2023 be adopted as presented. Could I have a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor Baines, Councillor Ring. Any amendments or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? That's unanimous. Thank you. Are there any declarations of pecuniary interest today? Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor Hamlin. And in regards to item 12.2, which is the ICBL request 245 Raglan Street, I have a outstanding code of conduct disqualifying interest as determined by the Integrity Commissioner in regards to the reasonable person test. I'll just briefly look to the clerk. The bylaw that is passed in item 13 includes can I participate in the bylaw, or should I also excuse myself for the bylaw? So I'd request that be severed, and I guess the Raglan Street one be dealt with at the end of 12 and the beginning of 13. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We have one item for the in-camera meeting today, and the motion is, Councillor Jeffrey.
Sorry, Mayor Hamlin. With respect to item 16.2, regarding the sponsorship request, Camp Bivouac, my grandchildren go to Laclay School, and while I don't know if they're going to camp or not, I think I'll recuse myself from that.
Okay, thank you.
Code of conduct. Thank you.
Yes, go ahead.
16.2, is that the staff update on the?
No.
Oh.
It's the
thank
request for sponsorship. Yeah. Okay, so the motion with respect to in-camera is as follows. Whereas the clerk hereby concurs the reasons for the in-camera session have been duly reviewed and considered, and the matters are authorized under the exception provisions to conduct a closed session in accordance with the Municipal Act prior to proceeding into closed session. Therefore, be it resolved that this council proceeds in camera in order to address a matter pertaining to personal matters about an identifiable individual, including town or local board employees. And the item for discussion is an appointment to the Trails Committee. Could I have a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor Potts and Councillor Doherty, any comments or questions? All those in favor? That's unanimous, and we'll move in camera now. Thank you. Okay, we've come out of our in-camera session for this afternoon, and could I have a motion, please, for a rise and report? Councillor Baines, and a seconder, Deputy Mayor Fryer. All those in favor? That's unanimous. Thank you. So what we were doing in camera was we have one vacancy on our Trails and Active Transportation Committee. So council has gone through the different applications of the people who applied, and this person will be contacted, and we'll have a bylaw before us at our next council meeting where that person name will be announced, and we will formally welcome them to the committee. To start the regular business of council tonight, we're going to read the land acknowledgement, and it is you? Yeah, Councillor Potts. Thank you.
For more than 15,000 years, the First Nations walked upon and cared for the lands we now call home. Anishinaabeg, Haudenosaunee, Ojibwe, and many others who were families, friends, and communities the way we are today. The town of Collingwood acknowledges the Lake Simcoe-Nottawasaga Treaty of 1818 and the relationship it establishes with the original inhabitants of Turtle Island. We acknowledge the reality of our shared history and the current contributions of Indigenous people within our community. We seek to continue empowering expressions of pride amongst all the diverse stakeholders in this area. We seek to do better and to continue to recognize, learn, and grow in friendship and community, nation to nation.
Thank you. We're now going to adopt minutes of previous meetings, and the motion reads as follows, that the following minutes of the council meeting as approved and presented. Regular meeting of council held March 27, 2023. Special meeting of council held March 30, 2023. And special meeting of council held April 11, 2023. And this is to approve them as presented. Could I have a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor Jeffrey and Councillor Perry. Any comments or questions about these? All those in favor? That's unanimous. Thank you. Is there any business arising from the previous minutes? Seeing none, we're on to community announcements, and we'll start with Deputy Mayor Fryer.
Thank you, Mayor Hamlin. This past Friday, I attended Central Park Arena to join Simcoe County Warden Clark, as well as Councillors Clearview Mayor Measures and Severn Mayor Burkett and Deputy Mayor Cox for the official opening puck drop of the Cal Patterson Memorial Women's Hockey Tournament. Cal's grandson Ethan also joined in as the tourney was in support of the Living Wish Foundation, an organization that Cal cherished. I expressed that it was Collingwood Council's and our community's honor to host this major fundraiser for 2023. Cal was mayor of Wasaga for 11 years, but his Collingwood roots and his love of the South Georgian Bay region always was a priority. Congratulations to the Patterson family and to the many volunteers on a very successful tournament. On Wednesday, April 26th, from 6:30 to 8 p.m., the Collingwood Historical Society will be holding an education session on the preservation of wooden windows. It'll be held in the library rooms B and C on the third floor level, and it is open to the public. And the other item would be that there's a blood donor clinic planned for May 10th from 1 to 7 p.m. at the Collingwood Legion. And that's what I had.
Thank you. Councillor Jeffrey.
Thank you very much, Mayor Hamlin. In the spirit of our celebrating National Volunteer Appreciation Week, it was a pleasure to be invited and to join the residents and volunteers at Sunset Manor this past week. And one of the things that came out of that was an expression of their need for volunteers to assist with some of the residents one-on-one. And you can bring a lot into their day. And the volunteers that were there were very excited with their work. They love it. And actually had one staff member who also volunteers. So she works there and then also gives her time after. She just enjoys the residents so much. So I hope if you have time that you will consider contributing some of it to a resident at Sunset Manor. And then this past Friday night, it was the hottest ticket in town as the Collingwood Blues won the Northwest Conference over Burlington Cougars, and series was 4-1, and so next they will be playing in the provincials, the Buckland Cup, and they will be playing the Trenton Golden Hawks, who just recently also won the Southeast Conference. So if they're able, or when they win that, then they'll go to the national competition in La Prairie, Manitoba, anywhere, somewhere.
Somewhere far.
La Portage, the prairie somewhere. So anyway, so no, it was great, and I won't steal Councillor Bain's thunder because I know he wants to keep promoting the great results that his organization is getting at those events. So hope you'll keep supporting. Oh, attendance 1,225.
Okay, thank you for that. Councillor Doherty.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. I have a couple of announcements. First of all, very important, this Saturday is Earth Day. And in Collingwood, we like to celebrate Earth Day in a very big way. We will have a flag raising at the library at 10 o'clock. And then at 10:30 until 1, we will have an Earth Day fair at the Collingwood Museum, and you will be able to speak to various volunteer organizations in our community who are accountable for aspects of our environment, including the Collingwood Climate Action Team, the pollinators, the Environment Network, and the Blue Mountain Watershed Trust Foundation. So I hope that lots of people will be out. You can learn, you can ask questions, and you can get involved. Next announcement. I was very impressed by the turnout that Parks, Rec and Culture had for their Summit View public consultation for park design this past week. In spite of the gorgeous weather, every seat was full at the library. And we had tremendous feedback on the various proposed designs. And just as a reminder that on the Engage Collingwood page, there's still an opportunity to submit suggestions, feedbacks, thoughts about this park, this neighborhood park that we will be building latter part of this year and into next year. And we'll also be soliciting for names for that park. And then finally, the Affordable Housing Task Force have recently launched a master plan project. And this is all in order to ensure that we have housing for all of the members of our communities in the months and years going forward. We also have installed a page on the Engage Collingwood page, and citizens are recommended it's suggested that you can go to the site, you can express your thoughts, you can share your stories, you can ask questions in a very safe and anonymous space, and you can learn more about the master planning process for affordable housing in our community. And that's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Houston.
I only had one for today, and Councillor Doherty beat me to it, and that's the Earth Day celebrations this Saturday. So that's all.
That's a big one. Thank you. Councillor Potts.
Over the weekend, large congratulations to the Collingwood Girls Lightning. This past weekend, they participated in the provincials in Brampton. Both our U11 B girls team and U13 B girls team both went 1-1-1, and our U15 B had a hard-fought 3-2 loss Saturday evening, but came home as bronze medal champions on Sunday, and they defeated North Bay and were able to accomplish that. So extremely large shout out to all the girls in the Lightning Association. And the community is certainly proud of all of this, and look forward to seeing what you can offer next year. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Ring.
Thank you very much, Mayor Hamlin. I too was going to mention the flag raising and Earth Day, but that's I figured it would be mentioned before it got to me. And I too was going to mention about the girls hockey, but I told Chris that I'll still congratulate them. I think that what the girls did, there were 3 teams there. They all did very well. The U15s to finish third in the province with hundreds of teams playing off to get there, it's quite an accomplishment, and I think they should be really proud of themselves. But I got really good important news I don't think anybody else is going to touch on that I would like to share with Council. Tonight's the beginning of the NHL playoffs.
No. You're telling us that.
and I want you to hear here first that Lord Stanley will be coming back to Toronto this year.
Thank you for sharing that. Good news all around. Go, Councillor Baines.
Thank you, Mayor Hamlin, and I'm assured that we'll hold Councillor Ring accountable if Lord Stanley does not reside in Toronto or Ontario after this. Calling all U14, U16, and U18 athletes, pay attention on June the 3rd and 4th, Active Life Conditioning is hosting Collingwood Combine on that date. And that is specifically 4 tests that are designed to evaluate all the critical fitness variables necessary to compete in sport. This will be its first year, and the expectation is that they're going to have 50 to 70 athletes in each of the 4 age groups for a total of about 200 to 280 athletes. This will be quite exciting and a wonderful challenge for our youth, and we're sure that everybody will be engaged in this. And now to Councillor Jeffrey's point about the winning amount for the 50-50 draw in Friday night's game. It was an extraordinary and record-setting $2,220, the largest amount ever given out at a 50-50 game, and it's because of the success of the Collingwood Blues, and keep going, guys. And for those of you who are interested and may want to purchase your own ticket again, stay tuned for the next game, which will probably be Thursday night, but is yet to be committed, because who knows where the amount will end up then. Thank you.
I think we have to ask you to tell us where the funds go for those who aren't familiar.
So happy you asked that, Your Worship. Yes, over about, I think it's now $64,000 has been donated by the Optimist Club of Collingwood, having received these 50-50 winnings, all of it going back to teams and organizations here in Collingwood, all focused on youth. Mental health programs, sports groups, the list goes on. And if you'll come and buy your ticket, you'll see in the board behind those who are selling the tickets a list of where the money has gone and to which organizations and the amounts. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Councillor Perry.
Thank you, Mayor Hamlin. I'm sure there's a job for you in announcing somewhere, Councillor Baines. Anyway, seeing as it's National Volunteer Week, I'd like to acknowledge all the local folks I saw over the weekend cleaning up the streets, ditches, and generally helping make the town shine. Thank you for all your hard work and dedication. Now that the snowmobile season is officially over, as short as it was, I'd like to take a moment to recognize the Blue Mountain Snowdrifters Snowmobile Club. The club maintains 110 kilometers of trails in the area, and they couldn't do it without the dedication of 25 volunteers, as well as an executive council of 4 very hardworking individuals. Together, they have spent a total of 624 hours staking trails, cleaning and clearing brush on trails, covering town bridges with protective plywood and planks, and removing them at the end of the season, among many other tasks. Almost 600 hours of grooming was done in the area, and in fact, 100 hours were spent on trails the club shares with Collingwood, and that makes it easier for people who use those shared trails to use when the snow is groomed. Almost $50,000 was collected in advertising fees from local businesses for signboards out on the trails, and this goes towards trail signage, public education directives, and many other costs associated with running the club. I will finish by saying that the club are fantastic Town of Collingwood ambassadors when they're out riding in different districts, always inviting riders to try out the area's amazing trails and visit the local establishments, not drinking and riding. During the Santa Claus Parade, if the club wins a prize in the service club / nonprofit category for floats, the money is donated back to local food banks and the club adds some more money to top up that amount. Fingers crossed for a better season next winter, and the club invites any fellow council members, I'm serious, or staff to join them for a ride next winter. I guarantee you'll have a great time, and it's a chance to see the town and local trails from a different perspective. And now on to a few library announcements. This month's virtual author talk is in honor of Poetry Month. In his debut collection, Mike Maddow traces his own journey to greater self-awareness through poignant memories of his childhood and his struggles with grief and depression. This event takes place on Thursday, April 27th at 7 p.m., and you can register for this event online at the library, collingwoodpubliclibrary.ca. Also, in honor of Poetry Month, youth are invited to a vinyl and poetry night on April 27th at 5 p.m. Please bring any vinyl records that you may have and prepare some of your favorite songs or lyrics. We will talk about music as both an art and poetry form. There is no need to register for this program, just drop in. And finally, the library launched a new ebook platform this month called Cloud Library. If you need assistance getting set up on the new platform, you can book a one-on-one help session with a member of the technology team, Jeff or Gordon, not Jeff Gordon, the retired NASCAR driver, by phoning 705-445-1571. Thank you, and that is all for the week.
Thank you. I'll just mention two things. As we've heard, the week we're in now is the National Volunteer Appreciation Week. And many of us on council were at the flagpole, our community flagpole on Friday, as we had a couple of volunteers hoist our flag in honor of this to celebrate the millions of people across Canada who volunteer every day, and those in our community, and in fact, those who help the various, who help town hall work better. I'm just going to say that. And I'll just say there's about 60 of those individuals, and they are taking part in committees, boards, assisting with special events. We've seen them as recipients of the Order of Collingwood, and just everywhere we go. We're going to hear from a few from our first deputation tonight, not even counted in the 60. So I really just wanted to give a nod to all those who make Collingwood such a great place to live, and really just say thank you on behalf of everyone. Also, just mention on Saturday night, my husband and I attended the McHappy fundraising dinner. I think that was called. Anyway, in honor of the Ronald McDonald House downtown, which everyone, of course, knows about. And we sat at a table representing Collingwood with the mayor and his wife from Clearview and the deputy mayor from Wasaga and her man. And luckily, my husband paid for the tickets, so I'll be seeing you next year if this comes up. But anyway, I just wanted to mention they had a couple come up and speak to their experience with Ronald McDonald House, and they were a Collingwood couple, and it was eye-opening, heartbreaking, and I was so grateful to hear that the Ronald McDonald House was able to help them. Their son was diagnosed with a tumor when he was 4. He's 12 now, so he's come out of it. But when she left to take him down to sick kids, she didn't know at the time, but she wasn't able to come home for 3 months. And she spent the first few nights in the room with her son, and her husband slept in his truck. So eventually they found out about Ronald McDonald House, and it just transformed their experience for 3 months. So anyway, I know the McDonald's will be having their McHappy Day coming up in early May, and so there'll be some opportunities for more funds to be raised as well. So that was what I wanted to mention. So now for our deputations, and this evening we're going to hear from Kathleen Wilkinson, the Keep Collingwood Clean volunteer group.
Thank you, Your Worship, Mayor Hamlin, members of council, and staff for the opportunity to speak before you today. As mentioned, my name is Kathleen Wilkinson, and I'm presenting to you this afternoon on behalf of our Keep Collingwood Clean volunteer group, members of which are here to support me. The small group of volunteers originated due to the overabundance of litter throughout the town and a lack of garbage receptacles. This original group of 4, which is now expanded to a group of 6, immediately decided to do something about it. They began by collecting the litter and cigarette butts, which, by the way, in 2013 officially became designated as litter. This soon became a daily routine of the group of four, and slowly they started to make a difference in Collingwood. Pizzaville donated the empty pizza sauce cans and Andrew's print shop made the labels. And these became receptacles throughout the town for cigarette butt collection. After spending time consulting with local businesses, many of these cans are now placed and located outside of their establishments. Our team routinely and regularly collect the cigarette butts. These cigarette butts are then bagged after they've been collected and shipped off to TerraCycle, a company, a recycling business located in Fergus, Ontario. And they recycle our cigarette butts, making them into plastic park benches and children's playground equipment. In return for us collecting, shipping, bagging and shipping, we get $1 per pound. That money is then collected and saved, and most recently, we made a donation of $300 to a local church, Heritage Church, here in Collingwood. To date, the team has continued to expand their collection by adding 2 more volunteers, and they are going around town, and you will see them in their designated T-shirts, and they are collecting all the trash that they find. Many people are contacting us now, telling us areas of concern, and we do send a team out there. It's a daily routine. This past weekend, on Saturday, as mentioned earlier, we held an information rally. And because of an article that was placed in the Collingwood Today, we were so thrilled to have a number of volunteers join our group, and we cleaned up and down Hurontario Street. Many, many people who were on the street, tourists or local residents, provided many positive comments as we cleaned. To get more support, our team's activities are now being advertised or promoted, I should say, in the Collingwood Today. And we have, as recently as today, we have distributed 210 flyers to businesses, inviting them to a Earth Day challenge by keeping their property clean. It's also our intent that we invite the local schools to participate. And should they do that, once we get board approval, then we would welcome them to clean up their schoolyards. And the number of children that have participation in the school that has the highest percentage, we would be willing to donate $100 to that school. Of course, that is pending the board approval at this point. We would like to encourage everyone to do their part. It's so important to all of us that not just Earth Day this coming weekend, but Earth Day is every day. And we would welcome everyone to support the group, as well as instill a pride that we all have for our community. In closing, I would like to share a few slides from that have been taken in and around Collingwood. And I thank you again for the opportunity to present this afternoon. Thank you once again. We welcome your comments and suggestions.
Okay, well, thank you. You guys are awesome. That's all I'm going to say. Thank you so much for what you're doing. And, you know, our town, it's time for us to every day be thinking about putting our best foot forward. And that's what you guys are helping us do. And I so agree with you in terms of the pride this brings to our community. Be sparkling clean. But I'm going to turn it over to Council. I think Councillor Baines wanted to speak to this. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship. Obviously, I hate to say whether litter is a science or not, but in regard to your comment about the number of waste receptacles on the main street, is there some sort of, every 200 meters or every 100 meters or whatever, and are we hitting those? I can see the lady in the back shaking her head. Because I'd like to try and work on facts to try and change behavior. So, well, if Disney does it, practically the cleanest community on earth, then it should work for us too. Second question, if I might.
Yeah.
Particularly in regard to the cigarette receptacles themselves, does the same proportion work for cigarette butts, or are they needed more often? And what is the cost per cigarette receptacle?
If I may respond, I will say, though, that we have found the local businesses and establishments very, very positive, receiving the offer to have the receptacles that we've made and provided. They're very willing to have them, the majority of them. So I think if cigarette butt receptacles were offered and were made available, we could work together with those businesses, I'm sure.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much for coming. Councillor Perry?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Hamlin. I do want to make, maybe this could be a platform or something, but most of us are dog owners on council, or quite a few of us are. I can't tell you how frustrating it is to walk with your dog and find somebody has picked up after their dog, but decided to throw the bag. I've seen them in trees. I've seen them thrown in the creeks behind the trails. I'm not sure what the logic is on that, but just try not, don't do it. Like, it's just very frustrating, as I'm sure it is for you, seeing it out there. I saw a picture of it here, and it just made me think of it. So, I mean, if we can get on track with not doing that. I'm not sure the logic, like I said, but it's just, it's mind-boggling to me. Anyway, that's just a little bit of a rant, but.
Is
Right.
so I think that works. And it's high enough.
Okay, that's great. Thank you. I think, well, I think you'd have to step up to the microphone, and this, we should move on. So if you could just make it brief, thank you.
A comment that I'm Cam Posh from Collingwood here, and in my neighborhood, I've spent a lot of time just picking up windblown garbage that gets caught in the ditches up against the construction site on Peel Street, Larry's buildings there in the past, etc. I think a key thing is that we have to have places to be able to pick up a handful of Timmy's cups on the side of the road or pop cans or whatever it is and be able to put it somewhere. So when I walk my dog in my neighborhood, we only have one garbage can on Collins Street at the park and a garbage can at the end of Linden Street on the trail behind Admiral School. So you know you've got two places that you're carrying your doggy bag with you, and I will always bend down and pick up whatever else I find along the way. I think we need a major investment with Collingwood Parks and Recreation in the town to populate hundreds of garbage cans around town, not just a couple of dozen, and manage those with pickups during regular garbage days or with Wendy's crew, Dean and Wendy's crew, of picking up the garbages when their schedule allows. I always remember walking my dog in Mississauga, visiting my mother-in-law, and how clean Mississauga was when Mayor McCallion was there, because there was garbage cans everywhere. Every couple of blocks in a residential area was a garbage can on the sidewalk. So it's common sense that we need some places to put the stuff, and people will actually bend down and walk 50 paces when they can see a garbage can and place it in the garbage. So let's open up with that we get some acknowledgement from Parks and Rec and the town that we need more facilities to get rid of the garbage that's getting tossed out. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for those comments. Deputy Mayor, would you like to take the chair for a moment? Okay. So I'm just going to make a motion that council select one or more councillors who might be interested in meeting with our volunteer group with a view to coming up with some ideas around how the town can best help move forward on this front with this wonderful group. And it might be everything from more garbage cans like we've heard, which is a good practical solution, to advertising the need for volunteers on specific days. It might include how can we get a litter bug campaign going so people will not be throwing their garbage down. Well, let's make it embarrassing again for people to toss their garbage. I think the communities have lost touch with, the right thing to do when it comes to your own personal garbage. So I'm going to bring that motion. We'll deal with it the next time the clerk schedules it. And I know Councillor Baines is interested in this. And if anyone else is, just let me know. Thank you.
That's so, I would just, you're going to bring it forward later, you said? Yes.
Yeah, so that's my notice of motion, I guess.
Yeah, so I'll turn the chair back to you then. Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just because we do have quite a few interested parties here, there was a couple of things that the town is already doing that we wanted to communicate very briefly. I know it's a notice of motion, potentially for other actions, but just to let folks know. We have Manager Cubitt here from Parks and Rec who may be able to mention a couple, and if she doesn't cover all the ones that I know of from the BIA and beyond, I might very briefly mention those as well.
Okay. Manager Cubitt, would you like to weigh in?
Thank you, through your worship. A couple of things that we have on the go in follow-up to the Earth Day celebration on April 22nd. We have community cleanup days, and that runs from the 22nd to May 9th. And this has been an annual initiative, and it's just an opportunity to remind people in our community to gather up litter and help take care of our green spaces. So during that time period, you can pick up supplies, garbage bags, recycling bags, gloves, health and safety reminders from Town Hall or the library during the regular operating hours. And we also have 3 designated trash pickup locations, Millennium Park, Harborview Park, and Heritage Park. You can find all that information on collingwood.ca/community cleanup. But we agree every day needs to be Earth Day. So outside of that time period, our park staff are always happy to provide those services, the supplies and the pickup. You just need to get in touch with us here at Town Hall and let us know sort of the area that you're cleaning up, and we'll make sure that we help out with supplies that way.
I have a question for you, Manager Cubitt, which is, what kind of gloves do you recommend people wear, or do you hand out?
I don't personally have a recommendation that I could list off the top of my head. I believe that we have the non-latex because we're aware of allergies, but I also understand that, what is the ones? Something was nitrile gloves was also recommended, but again, I can't say that personally.
Okay, thank you. CEO Skinner, is there anything you wanted to add?
A couple brief things. On the glove piece, one thing that we do ask people to be very careful of is any sharps or things that they think may be difficult. We do have an Adopt a Road and an Adopt a Trail program. We're going to republicize those soon so that people are aware. And one of the things that we do provide for those as well is flags, so that if someone sees something they don't want to touch, they can let us know, and we'll go out and ask someone who's appropriately trained to do something like pick up a needle, for example, if you're aware that it's there. There's some plastic work going on with some devices in the ditch inlets. We're doing some looking at what is not picked up, for example, with the cigarette butts that would otherwise run out into the harbor. And with Georgian Bay Forever, we're doing a collaborative pilot. And I'm hoping that we'll get a report back from them sometime soon. There's also a device in the harbor, 2 devices, I think, in the harbor that are pulling plastic debris that's floating into the device. I know there's been some technical issues with those. We're trying to figure out how to make them work the way that they're intended. And the BIA has some new innovative programs with garbage pickup downtown and collaboratively with E3. So depending on your votes at the notice of motion, et cetera. But I didn't want to let folks go without saying how much, from a staff perspective, we appreciate them and some of the things that people can participate in already, and hopefully will enhance going forward. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Baines, last word.
Yes, thank you. Sorry. Either on the town's website, I would assume through Parks and Rec, is there a designated priority list of what would be most effective for where citizens would get the best result for their efforts of picking up, whether it's in a park or a trail or something to that effect? Because you'd obviously want to spend your time where you pick up the most litter, I would think.
Go ahead.
Your worship, there isn't at this point. In years past, we have identified some key parks, but as that becomes more and more popular, they tend to be the ones that people go to first. So I think it's a matter of going to your own neighborhood and seeing what needs to be done there and letting us know.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, so we'll move on to the next item on the agenda. Thank you for coming. Feel free to leave whenever you're wanting to. So item 9 on the agenda are the reports and minutes of other committees and boards, and the recommendation is as follows: that the minutes of the following boards be hereby received and recommendations contained therein be approved. We have the Collingwood Police Services Board minutes of February 16, 2023, the Collingwood Public Library Board minutes of March 17, 2023. Could I have a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor Potts and Deputy Mayor, thank you. Does anyone have any comments or questions about either of these? Seeing none, all those in favor, and that's unanimous. Thank you. We have the reports now before us from the last Corporate and Community Services Standing Committee, and the recommendation before us is as follows. The Council received the Corporate and Community Services Standing Committee report from its meeting held April 3rd, 2023, and hereby approve the recommendations contained within the report as presented. And there are 3 items. The first one is the Collingwood Pride Festival financial support, with a recommendation to support the financial request of the Rainbow Club of Collingwood for $25,000 combined cash and in-kind for the Collingwood Pride Festival and refresh the Rainbow Sidewalk before the July Pride event. The second one is the Corporate Climate Change Action Plan and Greenhouse Gas Reduction Pathway Feasibility Study, with a recommendation to receive staff report, adopt a GHG reduction target of a minimum of 30% below 2019 levels, and adopt the Greener Collingwood Corporate Climate Change Action Plan. The third one is on the interim report for the Arts Centre feasibility study, with a recommendation for a process to proceed with Phase 3 of the Arts Centre feasibility study. Could I have a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor Jeffrey, Councillor Houston. Any comments or questions on these? Yes, Deputy Mayor.
In regards to, thank you, Mayor Hamlin. In regards to PRC 2022 or 23-02, the interim report in Arts Centre, I just want to clarify. It reads recommendation for a process to proceed with Phase 3 of the Arts Centre feasibility study. That means that we're getting a report on the process to consider at the earliest convenience at a committee meeting, and then make a decision about going to Phase 3, correct?
I believe that's right. Manager Cubitt, did you want to comment on that?
That is correct. That is our intention, to come back with how we see Phase 3 looking and what sort of approvals we will need, and timelines, all the details that we can offer so that you can decide whether we proceed in that respect.
Thank you. Do you have a follow-up, Deputy Mayor, or was that your question?
No, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Doherty?
Yes, thank you. And through you to Manager Cubitt, there has been some concern discussed relative to the selected space, which is 48 St. Marie, for further investigation. And the concern was because it was in the downtown flood plain. And I'm wondering if you could just speak to the rigorousness with which any site for an all arts facility would be investigated as a start.
Yes, go ahead.
Through you. I don't know how qualified I am to speak to that, but going through this process, we've identified Phase 3 as being the most robust to date of this process. So you'll see in the Phase 2 report the recommendations, and several of them include what additional work needs to be done, getting down into the nitty-gritty, including, when we talk about infrastructure and engineering, half a dozen or more additional studies, like sub-studies and assessments that need to take place, including traffic impact, parking, stormwater management, geotechnical, emergency access. We recognize that that level of detail was not reviewed at this early stage in the process. It required getting to a target location to then delve into those matters. We also identified that the 48 St. Marie Street location is largely interchangeable with the other 2 locations, the downtown, the other parking lots. And it's noted in the report that once this additional work is done, if we proceed into Phase 3 and we do the additional work, that if the 48 St. Marie Street location turns out not to be feasible, then we consider one of the other 2.
Thank you. Is that any follow-up?
Very good. Thank you.
Councillor Ring?
Through you to Manager Cupid. I think you answered my question, and I was just, I know this phase 3 is, we're just going to give permission if we pass this to take it back to staff and come back with your recommendations for phase 3. I just wanted to make sure that if something arises from that, that we still had the opportunity, or that everything else wasn't thrown out with the wash, that we still have an opportunity to maybe look at other alternatives, or maybe not even, depending on feasibility and cost, maybe not approve it at all.
Manager, would you like to address that question?
Yes, that's absolutely correct.
And I don't know, I'll just comment that from other municipalities I've seen from afar embarking on this kind of process, they typically bring in a group of knowledgeable people in the community who are passionate and experienced in these kind of things. And I'm just wondering, do you know at this stage whether your next phase of recommendations will include the creation of that kind of community committee to participate?
Thank you. Through you. I don't know that right now,
No.
unfortunately.
Okay.
Sorry.
That's all right. We have time. Okay. Is there any other questions? Okay. Oh, Councillor Doherty.
Thank you, Your Worship. If I may, I just wanted to say that the Corporate Climate Change Action Plan that we have seen, I am so supportive of this plan. I think that it's been thoroughly addressed. It looks forward to any number of possible sources of additional information or funding as we proceed toward a very aggressive target of 30% reduction in our greenhouse gas emissions for corporately from 2019, and this is matching up with national levels, and certainly is much higher than what we had initially what had initially been proposed back in the summer. So congratulations to staff, and I very much look forward to seeing how this progresses.
Yeah, thank you for mentioning that. I think it's worth highlighting it for sure. Okay, so I'll bring this to a vote. All those in favor? And that's unanimous. Thank you. We also have our report from our Strategic Initiative Standing Committee as follows. The Council received the Strategic Initiative Standing Committee report from its meeting held April 3rd, 2023, and hereby approve the recommendations contained within the report as presented. And there are two. The first one is the consideration of the municipal accommodation tax. The recommendation that staff report be received for information, and the Council directs staff to investigate the implementation of a municipal accommodation tax, including community and industry stakeholder consultation, and staff report back no later than September 2023 on potential options, including associated governance structures and processes. And the second one is the 2022 Statement of Remuneration, and the recommendation is to receive the staff report for information. Can I have a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor Baines, Councillor Doherty, thank you. Any comments or questions on this? All those in favor? And that's unanimous. Thank you. The last staff report, and this is listed separately because it was not a unanimous vote at the Standing Committee. This is with respect to the 2022 preliminary year-end financial statements, and the recommendation was that staff report 2023-10, being the 2022 preliminary year-end financial statements, be received for information. Can I have a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor Jeffrey and Councillor Ring. Are there any comments? Councillor Deputy Mayor Fryer.
Thank you, Mayor Hamlin. In deciding at the SIC not to support the receiving of T 2023-10, at the time it was because it didn't readily appear to me that the recommended surplus allocations adhered to policy. I also outlined that the concern was in conjunction with the detail of the recent T 2023-07, the 2022 investment report. Over the past couple of weeks, further review detail is being provided, and in summary, it continues to be the case that I can't support the allocation of $345,000 to life cycle reserve. Surplus policy indicates the working capital reserve must be at target balance before the life cycle reserve allocation choice can be utilized. For some reason, when the policy was enacted by previous council, it established a maximum target balance of 5% of net operating funds, but also set a minimum. It was the only one that had a minimum. If interpretation is that there's no maximum, then at least the midpoint, or about 1.8 million, when the current balance is 1.66, should be considered. Additionally, there is the concern that the working capital reserve is utilized for any year-end deficit, so some additional level to the 1.8 million midpoint probably should be in place. In considering how to put my position forward on this to council, I considered that there was useful information, additional information that came and was reviewed regarding the 2022 investment income allocations. And I didn't just want to oppose it again here without being able to propose an alternative for council to consider. In that regard, I would propose an amendment that 50% of the $345,000 be allocated to working capital reserve and the other half to life cycle reserve. In doing that, in my opinion, it will ensure that the surplus policy is being adhered to. I understand the situation in regards to the needs for the life cycle reserve, and I'm not taking it lightly. We have an upcoming opportunity to receive an extensive update on the core and non-core assets and learn more about any changes required to the asset management plan at that time. Again, what I am proposing gives me more assurance that it conforms to policy. I also believe that there's a need to establish some clarity on target balance for the working capital reserve and further discussion needed about investment income allocation. So I will bring those items forward, though, at the appropriate time. So I'd like to put that amendment request onto the table.
I'm just going to get some advice from the clerk on this, because this is before us to receive for information. And I think I've got two things on my mind. One, can we change the year-end financial statements? And secondly, does this require notice of motion? Have you sorted through those details? Or should I? I think I'll just, if I can, I'll just ask the treasurer.
If I may, Your Worship, I might need to lean on the clerk on the whether it's a receipt for information or not. But I can say that the final financial statements are not fully prepared. We're waiting on the auditors at this point. The audit is complete, but now they need to prepare that. So they'll be coming in June to the SIC meeting at that point.
Okay, and I'll just ask the clerk then maybe to comment on the need or the ability to amend these. Yeah.
Certainly. Thank you, Your Worship. Since this report is regarding the financial statements, I believe an amendment could be made versus having a notice of motion.
Okay. Okay, so are you going to, you're making that now?
I would, Mayor Hamlin, if I could. And I was looking at the report and the fact that it was explaining about the surplus amount and how it was being allocated. And I was proposing an amendment to that. So.
Okay. Do you have a seconder for that?
Doesn't look like it.
I'll second to
Okay.
put
Thank
it
you.
on the table.
All right. Would anyone else like to speak to this matter? Councillor Doherty.
Actually, I just would like to, through you, seek some clarity from the treasurer, and that is to remind us what is the difference between the life cycle reserve and the working capital reserve.
Thank you. Treasurer?
Thank you, Your Worship, and through you to the councillor. So the working capital reserve in general is meant to assist the town where there are unexpected expenses throughout a year that maybe we didn't budget for, one-time sort of uncertain or unforeseen expenditures, and it's also in the event of a potential disaster of some sort that it provides us some business continuity. The life cycle reserve is specific to our asset management needs, what we've been pushing all along throughout the budget and over the last several months. So they are two very different ones. I did want to clarify on the surplus management policy, if I could, just to add a little bit of context to what's been said, but what's been shared by the deputy mayor. And I can appreciate where he's coming from. I think it's a little bit of a differing of opinion, but the policy essentially says we start with certain reserves. So we start with the general, operating, capital, and I think I've sent that out and it's included in the staff report as well. And then we move to the working capital reserve when it comes to the surplus management policy. The working capital reserve is set up for all those reasons we talked about: business continuity, big expenditures that we weren't aware of, or one-time sort of situations that could occur. Right now sits at about $1,660,000. It is the only reserve within our policies of reserves that has a maximum and a minimum. The minimum is $750,000 and the maximum is 5% of net own source revenues from the previous year. So the minimum at $750,000, that 5% or that maximum would be about $2.8 million if we used 5% of 2021's net own source revenues. And that's just a fancy term to say what is the real revenues that the municipality can earn each year towards its expenditures. So leaving it at the 166, I thought was close enough or fairly close to the midpoint. The deputy mayor is correct that the midpoint would be closer to 1750 or 1.8 million. But because the threshold is set there, it doesn't really state within that policy what the absolute target balance needs to be. Gives you that max and minimum. And the way I interpret that is to provide some flexibility amongst not only staff, but council to shift where priorities are necessary. And I think in this case, the life cycle reserve is a very, very, I don't want to say precious, but a very immediate concern that we're dealing with. And we know that the non-core assets, that portion of our asset management plan will be coming soon over the next month or two. And I expect that the need or the requirements specifically for those non-core assets to be much more or much greater than what we see today. I think also that there are other reserves that's within our pool of reserves that address similar types of situations as the working capital reserve. So we also have an operating contingency reserve fund that allows us where, items that aren't budgeted or items that come up that we weren't aware of throughout the year, any kind of emergency, we can address that from that reserve as well. We have a similar capital contingency reserve too that does the same thing. And we have a general reserve, which is, they all sort of work together to try and make sure that we can prevent deficits occurring in a year and also assist where tax rate issues occur to help offset any of that impact. And those reserves together add up to about 2.6 million. So between the four reserves, working capital, the two contingency reserves I just talked about, and the general reserve, we have about $4 million in reserves, which is, I believe, very reasonable to address any of those concerns, which is why staff made the decision and brought the report to council to explain that allocation to life cycle reserve rather than working capital. So I just wanted to share that to provide a little bit of context.
Thank you for that. Councillor Jeffrey.
Thank you, Mayor Hamlin. So nothing too major to add, except that I really appreciate the Treasurer's willingness to explain that. And I really think that we need to support our staff's recommendations in these financial statements. It's I think the time to maybe review this might not be at the 11th hour of our financial statements, but rather a process that would maybe lead midway. We do have a report that comes to us that summarizes where we're at in our reserves. And at that time, maybe we can revisit the surplus allocation policy and have a more wholesome reflection on what the council feels as a whole going forward. But I really do respect the treasurer's abilities and recommendations here, and my vote would stay to support and to receive the report. So that's my comment.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to comment at this stage? Yes, Councillor Baines.
Thank you, Your Worship. It's really tough to wade in on this when you're the farthest thing from an accountant. But as a councillor, I just appreciate money being saved in different pots for the town for whatever rainy day might occur. But to the point of at some point having a finance and audit committee that you could sort of turn this to as a third party and basically say, what's your opinion in regard to how we've structured this model? It would, I would hope, give great assurance to all councillors that for that sober second thought, so to speak. Thank you.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor, did you want to have the last word here?
As long as everybody else has had a chance. Everybody fine? Thank you, Mayor Hamlin. And I think a couple of clarifications are in order. The other item that the working capital reserve is for, and I spoke about it earlier, if there's a deficit, it has to be used. And I can ask through you to the treasurer just to clarify that.
Sure. Treasurer?
If I may, Your Worship, through you to members of council, that yes, if a deficit does occur, the Working Capital Reserve Fund would be the first place to allocate funds through. However, I would say that there is the possibility, if that Working Capital Reserve Fund did not have the appropriate funding, that we could use all of those other reserves that we just spoke about.
Thank you.
I'll just follow up on that. But it has to be the working capital reserve first, so it would have to be down below the $750,000 minimum. And again, I agree with you. It's the only one who has a minimum. I don't really know why, and that's why I was saying I think we need to revisit that and establish something that's more clear. But it would have to be used up to or down to the minimum of $750,000.
Is that a question?
Through you to
Okay.
Treasurer, just to
Yeah.
clarify.
Treasurer, go ahead.
Yes, that is correct. Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, so just further follow up if I could. And in this unfortunate time where we're seeing heavy inflation and that, I just think it was a case of where I thought it would give us a little bit more of a position that could handle something like that if it occurred. The other thing I was going to say is this isn't about not supporting staff. This was looking at the fact that staff reported to us with this report that the surplus that we had worked with at budget time, the forecast was just around $200,000. And as it turns out, it was $608,000. So they were, in my opinion, providing information to us on how they were planning on allocating that additional surplus. And again, not at the 11th hour. The statements are underway, the audit's underway. It'll be some time before the statements are finished. So I just wanted to clarify on both those points because, as I said, I didn't come here to challenge staff. I was looking at it and looking at our policies and reading the way I read them. And I think the appropriate thing to do would be to put half of it into the working capital reserve and the other half to the life cycle reserve. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we'll bring it to a vote. We're voting on the amendment to the year-end financial statements, and the vote in favor would be to support the amendments as proposed by our deputy mayor. All those in favor? That's one. And all those opposed? Okay, and that's the balance. Okay, thank you. And now to receive the reports the report for information, the preliminary year-end financial statements, to receive them for information. All those in favor? And that's unanimous. Thank you. Okay, on to staff reports. So we have one staff report before us that we dealt with at the Development and Operations Service Committee recently. It's P 2023-09, Approval and Authorization Bylaw to execute a site plan control agreement. This is for 655 here Ontario Street, a multi-unit residential development. This has been expedited from the April 11th, 2023 Development and Operations Services Standing Committee. The recommendation before us is as follows, that Staff Report 2023-09, Approval and Authorization Bylaw to execute a site plan control agreement, 655 here Ontario Street, dated April 11, 2023, be received, and that site plan application number D11217 be approved subject to the following conditions, and there are two. 1, confirmation of municipal servicing capacity allocation, and 2, execution of a site plan control agreement with the Town of Collingwood to the satisfaction of the Director, Planning, Building and Economic Development and the Town Solicitor. And then an authorization bylaw to execute the site plan control agreement for a multi-unit residential development at 655 here Ontario Street be enacted and passed, and that Staff Report P 2023-09 be expedited to the April 17, 2023 meeting of Council, and finally that bylaw number 2023-039 being a bylaw to authorize the execution of a site plan control agreement for a property municipally addressed as 655 here Ontario Street, Collingwood, be enacted and passed the 17th day of April, 2023. Can I have a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor Baines and Councillor Perry. Any comments, questions? Seeing none. Oh, I have one from Deputy Mayor. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Hamlin. What I wanted to just actually do right now is just a comment. Wanted to, at this time, recognize that there's a letter on the consent agenda from Chair Linton of the Affordable Housing Task Force in support of the project. Increased rental accommodation is certainly one of the task force recommendations from their studies, and it's meant to help address the affordable housing crisis we have in our community. So I just wanted to express appreciation to the chair for putting that letter in support.
Yeah, thank you for drawing that to our attention. Okay, so all those in favor? And that's unanimous, thank you. The next two items are on our agenda are motions. And first one is for 243 St. Marie Street, and I believe the Deputy Mayor was going to excuse himself for this one.
Mayor Hamlin, I believe you're going to deal with 243 St. Marie first, and then it would be 245 Raglan that I will be stepping away for.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. Okay, so for 12.1, the recommendation is that the lands identified below representing one property be exempt from the provisions of interim control bylaw number 2021-024 and added to the bylaw Schedule A for the purposes and uses outlined in the delegations. And this is 243 St. Marie Street. Could I have a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor Jeffrey and Councillor Doherty. Any questions? Being none, all those in favor? And that's unanimous. Thank you. And the Deputy Mayor's leaving the council chambers, and we're going to deal with now 12.2. And the recommendation is as follows, that the lands identified below representing one property be exempt from the provisions of interim control bylaw 2021-024 and added to the bylaw Schedule A for the purposes and uses outlined in the delegations. This is with respect to 245 Raglan Street. Could I have a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor Doherty, Councillor Houston, any comments or questions? All those in favor? And that's passed unanimously. And before the deputy mayor comes in, we'll do with the bylaw for 245 Raglan Street under 13.1. It reads as follows. That bylaw number 2023-04, being a bylaw to amend the interim control bylaw number 2021-024, be enacted and passed the 17th day of April 2023, and this is with respect to 245 Raglan Street. Could I have a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor Potts and Councillor Houston, any comments? All those in favor, and that's unanimous. Thank you. Deputy Mayor Fryer, you can return. Thank you. So what we're going to deal with now is item 13.1, only with respect to 243 St. Marie Street, and it reads as follows, that bylaw number 2023-04, being a bylaw to amend an interim control bylaw number 2021-024, be enacted and passed the 17th day of April 2023, and this is with respect to 243 St. Marie Street. Could I have a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor Jeffrey and Councillor Potts. All those, any questions? All those in favor, and that's unanimous. Thank you. Are there any notices of motion this evening? Councillor Baines.
Thank you, Your Worship. I have provided to the clerk a notice of motion for the next council meeting on planting native maple trees here in Collingwood. Thank you.
Yeah, you should read that in now, if you don't mind. I was just,
But we want to wait.
yeah, even if you just read your be resolved, be
Thank
it
you.
resolved. Yeah, go ahead.
Be it resolved that council recognize the importance of our native maple tree and commit to always planting native maple trees whenever a maple is called for in any municipal planting projects.
Okay, thank you. So we'll deal with that at our next meeting. Next item is our county report. Deputy Mayor, is there anything you wanted to highlight?
I would, if I could, Mayor Hamlin, please. The first item I wanted to speak to was on April 11th, Simcoe County joined the movement with their April 11th adoption of AMO's call to action and the homelessness strategy, which was released on March the 3rd. So it's clearly evident that this will take a very much a combined effort. And municipalities like ourselves have taken the call to action as well, and we're looking to do it in a fashion that we're working together. But I know that Mayor Hamlin and myself will continue to bring forward as members of Simcoe County Council Collingwood's needs and ensure that the county's aware. Because the funding for this year is $19 million in the 2023 budget. So we'll be following that very, very closely and reporting back to council in that regard. The other item I was going to speak to was we had an extensive discussion and presentation on an affordable housing project that they're putting in on Rose Street in Barrie. Or requesting permission to put in, and the county council was supportive of proceeding and that, but it was pretty startling to see the costs involved now with housing projects like this. We were lucky enough to have the High Street project take place, I guess, 6 years ago, probably 5, 6. And at the time, the building costs were such that it was about $250,000 per unit for those apartments there. And the same kind of concept is proposed for Rose Street, and it'll have two large apartment complexes with commercial area below, housing things like Ontario Works and that. The cost projections are in the order of $787,000 a unit. It's just so staggering. The present value of the costing of the Collingwood is $660,000 if you tried to do it this year or at this point in time. So those numbers were pretty startling and caused, I think, a lot of the need for discussion because, and certainly a major aspect of it was the need for a parking garage for this facility and a bit of a sound buffer because it is right beside the 400. And that was in the order of $20 million just for those two items alone. But it's information that we can use with our own affordable housing task force, and it's great to have that kind of detailed information coming from the county and being able to turn it over to our committee, and they're working hard on their work with the South Georgian Bay Institute to have the calculator available. So we'll continue to be working hard on it, but it's a challenge to meet this crisis head on because the demand is such, and that we're in that kind of inflationary period that it's put those kinds of stresses on. So I wanted to report on both those particular items today.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you for doing that. Yeah, I can attest there was a very robust discussion about the cost of the project on Rose Street. Anyway, it's going to come back to us again. All right. Next item on our agenda is the consent agenda, and we have 3 items here. By way of preliminary, I'll just say that a general correspondence list can be reviewed on the agenda and meeting portal on the town's website. And this correspondence list includes items considered as bulk communications not specific to the town of Collingwood. So it's general in nature, and they're not included in the consent agenda below. So the recommendation is that council hear and receive the general consent agenda, and further, it's noted that the information and opinions provided in the general consent items are that of the author and are not verified or approved as being correct. There's one for National Forest Week sponsorship request. The second one is for a sponsorship request for Camp Bivouac. And the third is the Affordable Housing Task Force letter of support for the project at 655 Ontario Street that the Deputy Mayor referenced earlier. Councillor Jeffrey, did you want me to sever that out?
I'm
or-
okay to receive. It's just if
Okay.
someone brings a motion.
Oh, okay, good. So could I have a mover and a seconder to receive those? Yes, Councillor Jeffrey and Councillor Baines. Did anyone wish to address any of these? Councillor Baines.
Your Worship, just a clarification and I suppose a question of information. I noticed that the first one, the National Forest Week, has at the bottom of their form, please complete and return form by February the 17th, 2023. So I wonder if this is a moot point at this point for us as far as a consideration of a financial donation. And I'm not sure anybody could answer that unless they contacted the organizer themselves. But it says, I mean, it's September 17th to the 23rd, and yet their form says, please get this in by February the 17th. So,
Clerk Almost, have you any information on the deadline?
We just recently received this package, so I don't have any questions on the deadline. But if there's any member that wants to bring forward a motion to provide support, please let me know, and then we can look into it.
Okay, are there any other comments or wishing to speak to it? Okay, I'm going to bring this to a vote then. All those in favor? And that's unanimous. Thank you. Are there any items of old or deferred business that someone would like to bring forward? Under other business, I have Manager Cubitt is going to give us an update on the Community Recreation and Culture Grant Program recipients.
Thank you, Your Worship. We have a presentation here. So yes, I want to congratulate our recipients. I'll give you a little bit of an overview of the grant and the grant process. Starting with the CRCG, that's how we refer to Community Recreation and Culture Grant. Sorry, next slide. is one of the programs that the PRC department delivers to drive its current mandate, which is to support the health and well-being of the community by providing opportunities for all persons to participate in arts, culture, recreation, and sport. Next slide, please. To be eligible to apply for the grant, the applicant must be a Collingwood-based organization that is not-for-profit, charitable, or volunteer-based. And we have two types of grants, the financial and the in-kind. And for the last few years, the financial grants, we divided into two categories, a $1,500 amount and a $5,000 amount. And we proposed to allocate 19 of the $1,500 ones and 6 of the $5,000. We had a total budget of $58,500 for cash. And then in kind, this is essentially just the waiving of rental fees for parks and PRC facilities up to a maximum value of $5,000. And we had $35,000 budgeted for that this year. Next slide, please. So the project, the proposed project and the applicant must demonstrate alignment with at least one of the criteria that's listed here, and all of this mirrors what is in our current PRC master plan. Now, in addition to this, the applicants are evaluated based on the degree to which they have clarity of project budget, capacity to initiate and manage the proposed project, regard for the inclusion and accommodation of all persons, demonstrated support from other funders and partners, and the ability for the grant to support the growth of the applicant organization, because we're looking for growth and sustainability in our community groups. Next slide, please. So here I've summarized our budget, like I mentioned earlier, and the number of applications we received in each category this year. So you'll see that we received 14 applications valuing $70,000 in request for the $5,000 grant category, 13 applications valuing $19,500 in the $1,500 grant category, and 17 applications in the in-kind category valuing $43,273.50. So then when all the evaluations were complete, you'll see that because we had fewer applications in the $1,500 category than we did proposed allocations, they all scored sufficiently to receive the grant. So we allocated 13 grants at that level, and then that freed up some funds to actually help us. We allocated a 7th $5,000 grant. And then in the in-kind category, we allocated 14. And next slide, please. Here are our recipients for this year. So in the $5,000 grant category, we want to congratulate Breaking Down Barriers, Collingwood Music Festival, Magic of Children in the Arts, the Rainbow Club, the YMCA Simcoe Muskoka for the Youth Exchange Community Garden, the South Georgian Bay Music Foundation, and Theatre Collingwood. And then in the next slide, $1,500 category, Collingwood Climate Action Team, Collingwood Paddle Club, 5th Street Creative Initiatives, Green Earth, Clean Earth, Home Horizon Georgian Bay Residential Services, South Georgian Bay Arts Network, Blue Mountain Watershed Trust, Collingwood Clippers, Environment Network, Musicians Christmas, the Living Wish Foundation, Theatre Georgian Bay, and the YMCA Simcoe Muskoka for Making Change Rapids Poetry. And then our in-kind grant recipients are the Collingwood Clippers Swim Club, Collingwood Skating Club, Environment Network, Gaslight Theatre Association, South Georgian Bay Music Foundation, the Living Wish Foundation, Theatre Collingwood, next slide, Theatre Georgian Bay, Viva Variety, the YMCA Simcoe Muskoka for Rapids Poetry, Collingwood United Soccer Club, 5th Street Creative Initiatives, Living Better with Parkinson's, and Wrestling Night in Collingwood. So we want to congratulate those folks for being successful recipients. We want to thank them for everything they're contributing to our community, recognizing that all of the things that our department is trying to do in the community only happens with the additional support that our community provides. And if there are any questions, I'm happy to take those.
Okay, thank you. And congratulations to all the recipients and for your hard work making this happen.
Thank you.
Is there any other bit? Oh, you have a question? Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you. Manager Cubitt, just a question, if I might, through the mayor. Do you have members of the public involved in your selection process or committee?
Yes, we do, through you, Your Worship.
Go ahead.
The in-kind facility grants are evaluated by a number of PRC staff members, but the financial grants are evaluated strictly by a community of volunteers. We put out an open call through the town page to community members. We had 3 that did the evaluation process, and they formed the evaluation committee. And all the evaluators are trained. Basically, they're run through all the evaluation criteria and how the weighting works, so that they can do the evaluation based specifically on the criteria and the applications, not necessarily on their familiarity with any one project.
Thank you. And a follow-up, if I might. And in regard to the $1,500 level, are you going to make any recommendations next year to council in regard to whether that should be increased in regard to inflation and everything else, and the fact that it was underutilized, if you will?
Right. Thank you. Through you, Your Worship. Yes, our intention is to review the whole program while we're doing the PRC master plan refresh, and take into consideration things like the number of applications that we got. So depending on how that goes, we'll be back to council with some recommendations.
Thank you. No further questions.
Okay, those are good questions. Any other questions? Nope. Thank you. Would there be any other business from members of council tonight? Okay, so we have a confirmatory bylaw before us, that bylaw number 2023-041, being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the regular meeting of council held April 17, 2023, be enacted and passed the 17th day of April, 2023. Could I have a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor Potts and Councillor Ring. Any comments or questions? All those in favor, and that's unanimous. Thank you. And motion to adjourn. Oh, Councillor Houston. Okay, all those in favor. Okay, thanks very much, everyone. Good night.
First, Brandon? No.